Every morning at 6:10, the town played the sound of rain. Not real rain. Rain had a weight to it. 1,000 tiny fingers against rooftops, gutters, skin. It made smells rise from the pavement. It changed the color of brick, made gardens bow their heads, filled the shallow cracks on the road with trembling silver. Real rain left evidence. This rain came from the speakers. They were fixed to the telephone poles all the way down Kisaragi Ward, small gray boxes with rust at the corners and wire mesh over their mouths. They had been there longer than anyone could remember. At 6:10 every morning, before the sun had properly committed to rising, they hissed awake with a crackle like something clearing its throat. And then came the recorded rainfall. No announcement, no warning chime, just rain. 10 minutes of it. At 6:20, it stopped. The first time I heard it, I asked my aunt why the town did that. She was standing at the stove, frying an egg in a square pan, the blue flame trembling under it. She did not look at me. To keep the day in order, she said. I thought it was one of those adult answers that meant nothing. Adults often answer children with sentences shaped like wisdom, because they are too tired to explain. I was 12 then, newly orphaned, newly moved into her old house at the edge of the ward, and everything sounded strange to me anyway. The cicadas that screamed from the cedar trees, the train crossing that rang even when no train passed, the neighbor's dog that howled every evening at exactly 8:03 and then never made another sound. My aunt's house was narrow and tall, built before the roads were widened, with a roof of dark tiles and a hallway so long and dim that it seemed to stretch farther at night. The room smelled of tatami, old smoke, and something medicinal. There were framed photographs on the walls, but most had been turned face down on their hooks so that only the brown paper backing showed. I asked about those too. Some faces should rest, my aunt said. She was not cruel. Not really. She fed me, washed my uniforms, made sure I knew where the towels were. But she moved through the house like a person who was trying not to wake someone. Her steps were soft. Her voice stayed low. She closed every door behind her, even if she was coming back through it a second later. The only rule she gave me was this: when the morning rain plays, stay inside until it ends. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She put the egg on my rice and pressed the chopsticks into my hand. Not on the veranda, not at the window, not with the door open, inside. What happens if I go out? Her eyes lifted to mine. For a moment, I saw something in her face that frightened me more than anger would have. It was recognition, as if she had been waiting for me to ask that exact question, and the answer had been sitting behind her teeth for years. You get counted, she said. That was all. I should tell you that Kisaragi Ward was not marked on maps. Not properly. It appeared on municipal paperwork, school forms, electric bills, funeral notices. It existed when people spoke of garbage pickup routes, festival permits, drainage repairs. But when I unfolded the city map at school and looked for the place where I lived, the ward dissolved into blank gray blocks between named districts. No streets, no shrines, no post office, just a faint grid like a watermark. My classmates did not find this strange. It's always been like that, said Haru, the boy who sat in front of me and smelled faintly of bicycle grease. Maps don't like this place. At 12, I accepted that. Children are very good at accepting impossible things when everyone around them behaves as if they are ordinary, so my routine formed. Wake at 6. Hear my aunt moving downstairs. Lie still. At 6:10, the speakers crackled. Rain filled the house, loudest in the bathroom pipes and under the floorboards, as if the recording did not come from outside but from inside the walls. I would dress while it played. I would not look through the curtains. I would wait. At 6:20, silence, then breakfast, school, return before the evening chime. Homework, dinner, bath, sleep. For 3 months, nothing happened. Then I met the woman at the bus stop. It was October, the season when the light thins and even familiar streets begin to look like old photographs. I had missed the early bus because I forgot my calligraphy book and had to run back home. By the time I reached the stop, the road was empty. The sky was low and pale. The cedar trees on the slope across the street stood perfectly still. She was sitting on the bench. I knew everyone who used that stop. Elderly Mr. Goto with his cane, 2 office workers from the apartments, a high school girl with a violin case, sometimes a mother with twins. This woman was not one of them. She wore a dark blue raincoat, though the sky was clear. Its hood was down, revealing hair cut bluntly at her jaw. Her face was narrow and white, not pale like illness, but like the underside of a stone. She smiled when she saw me. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was kind, too kind. The kind of voice strangers use when asking a child to come closer. I nodded and looked at the timetable. "You live in the Natsume house," she said. I turned. "My aunt's house?" "Yes, the Natsume house, with the sleeping faces." My fingers tightened around my school bag. "You know my aunt?" I knew her sister, my mother. The road seemed to lengthen between us. "You knew my mother?" The woman patted the bench beside her. I did not sit. "She looked like you," the woman said. "At least the parts that stayed." I did not understand, and because I did not understand, fear arrived late. It came quietly, like cold water seeping into a shoe. "What do you mean?" The bus appeared around the bend before she could answer. I climbed on quickly, paid, and took a seat near the front. Through the window, I saw her still sitting on the bench, hands folded in her lap. As the bus pulled away, she lifted one hand and waved, not at me, at the empty seat beside me. That night I asked my aunt about the woman in the raincoat. The chopstick stopped halfway to her mouth. "Where?" "Bus stop." "What time?" "After the morning rain." Her shoulders relaxed so slightly I almost missed it. "What did she say?" "That she knew Mom." My aunt stood, took both our bowls to the sink, though we had not finished eating, and turned on the tap. Water roared against porcelain. "Do not speak to her again." "Who is she?" "No one. She said she knew Mom." My aunt shut off the water. For the first time since I had moved in, she raised her voice. "Your mother left this place. She left because she understood. And then she came back to have you here like a fool. Because grief makes people sentimental, and sentiment kills faster than disease. Do not speak to that woman." I stared at her. "My mother came back here." My aunt pressed both hands to the sink. Her knuckles were pale. "You were born in this house." The hallway behind her seemed to darken. "No, I wasn't." I knew where I was born. I had seen the hospital name on documents. My father used to joke that I came into the world during a thunderstorm and screamed louder than the sky. I remembered the story because it was one of the few stories he told more than once. My aunt turned around. "You were born twice," she said. Then she went upstairs and locked her bedroom door. After that, I began paying attention. That is how horror begins in a daily routine. Not with a scream, not with blood, but with noticing. I noticed the recorded rain never sounded exactly the same, though everyone called it a recording. Some mornings it fell soft and distant, like rain beyond closed windows. Some mornings it battered the roof so loudly I could barely hear myself breathe. Once beneath it, I heard what sounded like bare feet running through shallow water. I noticed no one opened their curtains before 6:20. Not one house, not one apartment. The whole ward kept its eyes shut while the rain played. I noticed every shop had a small metal plate screwed above the entrance. At first thought they were old address markers. Then I looked closer. Each plate had a number etched into it. The bakery, 44. The pharmacy, 12. The barber, 3. The abandoned toy store with newspapers taped over the windows, 118. My aunt's house had no plate. Instead, above our front door where a plate might have been, there were 4 old screw holes in the wood. One afternoon, while my aunt was at the market, I searched the house. I started with the turned photographs. Most were ordinary family pictures. My aunt younger and fuller faced. My mother as a teenager with her hair tied back. Grandparents I had never met. Summer festival scenes. A school entrance ceremony. But in every photo someone had been scratched out. Not with a pen, with something sharp. Faces had been scraped away until the paper furred white. In one photograph, my mother stood on the veranda holding a baby. Me. I knew it was me because my name had been written on the back in my father's handwriting. But there was someone behind us. A figure beyond the veranda, partly hidden by the garden's persimmon tree. The body was visible. Dark raincoat, hands folded. The face had been scratched completely away. I found the old metal plate in a drawer under folded cloths. It was heavier than I expected. 0, not 0 as a modern oval, but a perfect engraved circle. I was still holding it when my aunt came home. She stood in the doorway of the storage room, grocery bags hanging from both hands. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then she dropped the bags and slapped me. The shock was greater than the pain. My aunt had never touched me with anger before. The plate hit the floor between us and rang once, a dull bronze sound. "I told you not to dig," she whispered. "You didn't tell me anything. I told you enough." "No, you talk like everyone already knows the ending." Her face crumpled then, not into tears but into exhaustion. "You want the ending?" she asked. "Fine." She picked up the plate and held it between us. "Every house gets counted, every family, every bloodline. The number above the door tells how many times the ward is taken from that house." "Taken what?" "Someone." The light in the room seemed to lower. "When the morning rain plays, it counts. It listens for doors, windows, names, movement. If you are outside, if you are visible, if you answer when it calls, it marks you. Not immediately. It has patience. It waits for a morning when no one is careful." I wanted to laugh, but my mouth had gone dry. "That's insane." "Yes. You expect me to believe speakers steal people?" My aunt's gaze sharpened. "The speakers warn us. They are not the thing itself." "What is?" She looked toward the hallway. "The first sound this town ever heard." That night, she told me what had happened in Kisaragi Ward before it was a ward, when it was still a hollow between hills where farmers grew millet and buried their dead above the flood line. There had been no river then, no road, only fields, wells rot, and the shrine at the northern edge where the cedars grew too close together. The shrine was dedicated to no official god. Its name had been forgotten before paper records began. The old people called it Ame no Kochi, the mouth of rain. During drought years, villagers prayed there. They brought rice, sak, dolls made of straw. Sometimes the rain came, sometimes it did not. But whenever it did, the old people said they heard voices falling with it. Not thunder, not wind, voices, names spoken in the rain. At first, it was considered a blessing. The dead were close, ancestors answered, fields drank, wells filled. Then one year the rain continued for 40 days. No flood came. That was the strange part. 40 days of rain and not one field drowned. The water vanished into the soil as if the earth had become a throat. On the 41st morning, the rain stopped, and every firstborn child in the village walked out of their houses before dawn. None of them were seen again. There were no footprints, no torn cloth, no bodies in wells, ponds, fields, or forest. Only the sound of rain remained. Though the sky was clear, it came from the shrine. The villagers burned it down. The next morning the sound came from their roofs, so they abandoned the village. But the sound followed the bloodlines. Wherever descendants settled, they heard it. At dawn, in empty rooms, in their children's mouths as they slept. Eventually, the remaining families returned to the hollow. and made an agreement with the thing they had failed to destroy. They would gather in one place. They would let it count them. They would obey its warnings. And in exchange, it would take slowly. That was Kisaragi Ward, a cage built not to keep something out, but to keep something fed in a controlled manner. I listened without interrupting, because the story was too absurd to challenge piece by piece. It entered me whole, like a swallowed stone. When she finished, my aunt made tea neither of us drank. "My mother," I said. "Was she taken?" "No, but you said she was counted." "What's the difference?" "Being taken ends quickly. Being counted means it can find you anywhere. Your mother left, but after you were born, the rain began in her apartment. Your father heard it too. She knew then that you had inherited the mark. My father never mentioned this. He tried to protect you from it." "How?" My aunt looked down. "He made a mistake." The room seemed to hold its breath. "What mistake?" He answered. "My father died in a traffic accident when I was 8. A truck ran a red light in clear weather. My mother died 2 years later of a heart condition no doctor had noticed before. That was the official shape of my life. Accident, illness, papers, funerals." My father answered. "What?" "When the rain began at your apartment, a voice called your name from the bathroom drain. Your father answered instead." I remembered then. Not clearly. Memory is cruel in that way. It hides the knife until you touch it. I remembered waking before dawn in our old apartment. I remembered rain though it was summer and the windows were shut. I remembered my father standing in the hallway, one hand raised as if to calm someone. I remembered my mother holding me so tightly I could not breathe. And I remembered a voice from the bathroom. A small voice, my voice, calling my name. My aunt's eyes glistened. He gave it his name. That bought time. Your mother brought you here because this is the only place where the rules are known. I wanted to ask whether my father suffered, whether he knew what would happen, whether the truck driver saw something in the road before impact, but I could not. Instead, I asked, "Why doesn't our house have a number?" My aunt looked at the metal plate on the table. "Because this house is not counted anymore." "Why?" She did not answer. The next morning at 6:10, the rain did not play. I woke in the silence before my alarm and felt wrong immediately. There is a kind of silence that belongs to sleeping houses, soft, layered, full of hidden ticks and sighs. This was not that. This was an erased silence, the kind that follows a power cut in a room full of machines. I sat up. The curtains were closed. My school uniform hung from the chair. The air smelled wet. From downstairs, my aunt shouted my name, not loudly, urgently. "Do not move." I froze with one foot out of the futon. The speakers outside crackled, once, twice, then a voice spoke, not through the speakers, through every surface of the room. It was my father's voice. "Good morning." My breath stopped. I had not heard that voice in 4 years except in dreams, and dreams always ruin the dead. They make them too loud or too vague, flatten them into memory's poor imitation. This was exact, the faint roughness in his throat, the warmth at the edge of words, a tiny pause he made before saying something gentle. "Are you awake?" Downstairs, my aunt shouted again. "Cover your ears." I pressed my hands over them. It did nothing. The voice was inside the bones of the house. "I'm outside," my father said. "I forgot my key." Something knocked on the front door 3 times. Then it knocked again, but not from downstairs, from my bedroom door 3 times. My aunt began chanting. I had never heard her chant before. Her voice shook through the floorboards, repeating words I did not recognize. Old words, wet words. The bedroom doorknob turned. I stared as the latch clicked. A smell entered the room before the door opened. Rain-soaked asphalt, hospital sheets, my father's aftershave. The door opened 1 finger's width. Beyond it stood darkness, not the hallway. A vertical darkness packed tightly into the doorway, glossy and moving, as if a sheet of black water had been hung there. My father whispered from within it, "You got so tall." My hands were still clamped over my ears. Tears ran down my face. I had not decided to cry. My body had chosen for me. "Let me see you." The gap widened. Something pale appeared low in the darkness. A hand. It looked like my father's hand, but it had too many knuckles. Not extra fingers, extra bends, as if the bones had been folded and refolded until the hand could reach around corners. It gripped the door. Downstairs, something crashed. My aunt screamed, not in fear, but effort. The door slammed shut so violently the frame split. Then the rain began, all at once. Not from the speakers, from the ceiling, walls, floor. Water burst through the tatami, streamed down the windows, poured from the light fixture. I screamed and stumbled back, slipping as the room flooded ankle deep in seconds. The water was warm. In it floated small white things. At first I thought they were petals. Then one touched my foot and turned over. A fingernail. The rain stopped at 6:20. The water vanished with it. My room was dry. The split door frame remained. My aunt was at the bottom of the stairs unconscious, blood running from her nose and ears. In front of the closed front door lay the old metal plate with the engraved 0. It had been bent almost in half. After the ambulance took my aunt away, the ward changed. Not in a way outsiders would notice. The bakery opened. The pharmacy raised its shutters. Children walked to school. The bus came at 7:03. But everyone looked at me differently. They did not stare exactly. They looked beside me, over my shoulder, at the space my body had just occupied. At school, Haru moved his desk a few centimeters away from mine. When I asked why, he said, "My mother told me not to share edges with you." "What does that mean?" He shook his head. "I'm sorry." By lunch, everyone knew. Not the story, perhaps, but the shape of it. Adults know how to pass fear without words. Children receive it like weather. I went to the hospital after school. My aunt was awake, sitting upright in bed, looking smaller than she ever had. Cotton plugged her ears. Burst vessels reddened her eyes. On the bedside table sat a plastic cup of tea and a folded paper charm from a shrine I knew no one in town visited. "You have to leave," she said. I stood in the doorway. "You said it can find me anywhere." "It can, but not everywhere equally." "You're not making sense." "I should have told you earlier. I thought the house would hold." "Why didn't it?" She turned her face toward the window. Beyond the glass, the hospital parking lot shone under a clear sky. "Because it heard your father in you." A coldness moved through me. "What?" When he answered, he gave his name. But names are not just sounds, they are tides. You kept him alive by remembering him. That made a path. "You're saying this is my fault?" "No." She looked back at me sharply, and for once her voice had strength. "No, grief is not guilt. But the thing under this town feeds on relation. Parent to child, sister to sister, lover to lover. The stronger the tie, the clearer the path." I thought of my father's voice at the door. "Let me see you." "What does it want?" My aunt's mouth trembled, to become real enough that it no longer needs rain. I waited. She closed her eyes. "There is a reason our house had 0. Your grandmother made a bargain when your mother and I were young. The ward wanted a child from our family. It had already taken so many. Your grandmother offered the house instead." "How can a house be offered?" "By making it remember for us." I looked at her, not understanding. "The photographs," she said, "the faces, the rooms, every grief, every name. The house swallowed the count. It became a stomach for memory. As long as the house held our dead, the ward could not count us properly. The turned photographs, the closed doors, the hallway that felt too long. My mother left because she hated it. My mother left because the house began speaking with our father's voice." The hospital machines hummed softly. "Like this morning." "Yes." "What happened to Grandma?" My aunt did not answer. "What happened to her?" "She is still in the house." I stepped back. She died. No, my aunt said. That would have been easier. That night, I returned to the house alone. The ward watched me do it. I felt faces behind curtains, the click of locks, the pulse of conversation as I passed. At the front gate, the persimmon tree scraped one branch against another, though there was no wind. Inside, the house smelled of wet wood. I had packed a small bag before visiting the hospital. Clothes, money from my aunt's drawer, my mother's photograph, my father's watch. I intended to leave by train before dawn. I did not know where I would go. Any place with noise, any place with maps. I found the woman in the raincoat sitting at the kitchen table. The light was off. The room was blue with evening. She had made tea. You shouldn't be here, I said. She smiled. I was invited. By who? The house. I gripped my bag. You're not real. Not completely. What are you? She lifted the teacup but did not drink. I am the part of your grandmother that learned to live inside the rain. The room seemed to tilt. I thought of the scratched photograph, the figure behind my mother, the dark raincoat. No, yes. My grandmother protected us. She tried. The woman's smile softened. Protection is just a slower form of surrender when the enemy is patient. You're lying. Of course, but not about that. She stood. Her height changed as she rose. At the table she had seemed small. Standing, she was too tall for the room. Her head did not touch the ceiling, but only because her neck bent slightly, politely, like a guest in an old house. You should leave before morning, she said. That's what my aunt said. She is right. Then why are you here? To tell you what she cannot. Outside, the evening chime began, a simple melody broadcast from the same speakers that played the rain. Children in Kisaragi Ward were taught to come home when they heard it. I had always thought it sounded sad. Now it sounded like a lullaby sung beside an open grave. The woman listened until it ended. The rain does not take people, she said. People are too small. I said nothing. It takes patterns, a mother calling a child, a husband answering a wife, a town waking, a family eating breakfast, a door opening at the same time every day. It learned us through repetition. That is why routine matters here. Routine is a fence, but it is also a shape it can wear. Her face, already pale, seemed less defined in the dimness. The ward thinks the morning rules protect them. They do not. They feed it predictability. Every day, every house performs fear at the same hour. Every day, the thing becomes better at pretending to be a town. My mouth went dry. Pretending. She looked toward the hallway. How many people here have you seen outside the ward? I thought of my classmates, shopkeepers, neighbors, teachers. The question seemed simple until I tried to answer. People leave for work, I said. Do they? The bus. Have you ever stayed on it past the station? I had not. The office workers. Have you seen their offices? No, but have you ever received a letter from outside that was not forwarded through this address? Has anyone visited? Has any delivery driver stepped beyond the gate after sunset? Have you ever watched a plane cross the sky above Kisaragi Ward? I remembered the blank maps, the missing streets, the bus windows that always fogged before the main road, the train crossing that rang even when no train passed. What is this place? The woman's eyes were very dark. Digestion. The house creaked, not settling, listening. When the first children disappeared, she said they did go into the forest. They went inward, into the sound. The villagers built rules around the wound and called the rules survival. But wounds do what wounds do. They close over what enters them. She moved closer. The ward is not a town haunted by rain. It is rain dreaming. It is a town. I laughed once, not because it was funny, because the mind sometimes throws laughter at a wall to see if reality cracks. My aunt is real. Yes. My parents were real. Yes. I'm real. The woman tilted her head. For now. The hallway behind her seemed longer than before. The doors along it were closed. From behind one I heard a faint rustle like someone turning in bed. Your grandmother's bargain did not protect your family by hiding you from the count, she said. It protected the ward from you. From me. You were born during rain. My father said thunderstorm. Your father remembered thunder because thunder is easier than voices. The floorboards beneath us groaned. When your mother returned pregnant, the house knew. The ward knew. The rain gathered at the roof and waited. You were born at 6:10. You did not cry. I felt suddenly very young. The woman's voice lowered. The rain cried for you. From somewhere deep in the house came a wet, dragging sound. What am I? I whispered. The woman reached out and touched my cheek. Her fingers were cold and damp. The first thing it made that could leave. A door opened in the hallway. I did not look. I could not. The smell that came from it was old tatami, earth, and human breath held for too long. The woman in the raincoat leaned close. At 6:10 tomorrow, every speaker in the ward will play your voice. Not your father's, yours. When they hear it, they will open their doors. They will think it is their dad, their children, their mothers, their own thoughts calling from outside. They will step out, and the ward will stop pretending. Behind me, the kitchen window darkened, though the evening outside was not yet fully gone. What happens then? It rains everywhere. The dragging sound came closer. I turned despite myself. At the end of the hallway stood my grandmother. I knew it without ever having seen her alive. She wore a faded house dress. Her silver hair hung in strings around her face. Her body was thin, impossibly thin, skin sagging from bone like wet paper. But it was her mouth that made me unable to move. It was full of small black stones. They pressed between her lips, bulged her cheeks, crowded behind her teeth. When she tried to speak, they clicked together. The woman in the raincoat watched her with something like pity. She has been holding the house shut for 17 years. My grandmother lifted one shaking hand. In it was a photograph. She held it out to me. I forced myself forward. Each step down the hallway seemed to take longer than the last. The air thickened. The doors on either side trembled in their frames. The photograph showed my mother, younger than I had ever known her, standing in the garden under a sky white with rain. She held a newborn wrapped in cloth, me. Behind her, the house windows were full of faces. Every photograph face that had been scratched away, all watching. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, was one sentence: "Do not let him love the dead too much." My grandmother's jaw worked. Stones shifted. One fell from her mouth and hit the floor. It was not a stone, it was a tooth. Then another fell. Then another. She opened her mouth wider, and from it came the sound of rain. I ran. The woman in the raincoat did not stop me. My grandmother did not stop me. The house did. The hallway stretched. The kitchen door retreated. The floor lengthened board by board, each seam widening into black water. I ran past doors I had never seen before. A nursery with soaked bedding. A room full of shoes arranged by size, a bathroom where water poured upward from the drain. A classroom with no windows. Every desk carved with my name. From behind each door, voices called. My mother asked if I had eaten. My father asked me to unlock the door. My aunt begged me not to leave her. Haru laughed and said the bus was waiting. My own voice whispered from under the floorboards, "I'm already outside." I reached the front door and grabbed the handle. It would not turn. Above it, the 4 empty screw holes began to bleed. The metal plate with the 0 lay on the floor where my aunt had left it. Bent. Useless. I picked it up without thinking and slammed it against the door. Once. Twice. On the 3rd strike, the plate split my palm open. Blood ran into the engraved circle. The house inhaled. Every door behind me slammed open. I pressed my bleeding hand against the 4 screw holes. "I give it back," I said. I do not know why those words came. Maybe they were mine. Maybe they belonged to my grandmother. Maybe the house had stored them for years, waiting for a mouth. I give the count back. The front door opened. Outside, Kisaragi Ward stood in perfect darkness. No streetlights, no moon, no stars. Only the pale line of the road and the black shapes of houses. In every window, people stood watching. Not silhouettes. People. Their faces pressed close to the glass. Some were neighbors, some were classmates, some I had never seen. Some had been dead for decades. Every one of them was smiling. The speakers crackled. 6:10, but it was evening. The rain began. It fell upward. From road to sky, from gutters to clouds, from my skin into the dark above. Droplets lifted off rooftops and leaves and telephone wires, carrying with them dust, hair, insects, flecks of paint, tiny shreds of paper, loose threads from clothing, the warmth of breath. The whole ward was being gently unmade. The woman in the raincoat appeared at the gate. Her hood was up now. "Run," she said. "Where?" She pointed down the road. For the first time, I saw beyond the bend. Not the bus stop, not the slope of cedars, a tunnel. Concrete, rectangular, lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The kind of service corridor you might find under a station, or behind a hospital, or in the maintenance passages of a building too large to understand. A low hum came from it. The back rooms, I thought absurdly, though I had never heard that word then. Not a place, a condition. Architecture without witness, space continuing after purpose has died. Behind me, the house screamed with my father's voice. I ran. The ward moved around me. Houses leaned inward, fences bent. The road softened under my feet like soaked bread. In the windows, smiling faces blurred as rain took their features upward. I passed the bakery, its number plate spinning from one screw. 44 became 45, then 46, then symbols I could not read. The pharmacy shutters rattled open and shut like teeth. At the bus stop, the bench was occupied by children in old clothing, all wet, all barefoot. One of them stood. He had my eyes. "Don't go," he said. "We just learn how to be you." I kept running. The tunnel mouth widened as I approached. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Beige walls, damp carpet, no doors. The air smelled of dust, wet concrete, and stale air conditioning. Behind me, Kisaragi Ward rose into the sky in strands. Roofs, trees, telephone poles, curtains, hands. All of it lifting with the rain. At the tunnel entrance, I looked back once. My aunt stood in the middle of the road in her hospital gown. For one impossible second, I thought she had come to save me. Then she smiled with too many teeth and spoke in my voice, "Inside until it ends." I entered the tunnel. The rain stopped behind me. Silence rushed in so hard I fell. When I woke, I was in a train station. Not Kisaragi Station. A real one. Crowded. Bright. Morning. People stepped around me with irritation and concern. A station worker asked if I was drunk. I was 17 years old. Not 12. My school uniform was too small. My sleeves ended above my wrists. My shoes pinched. In my hand, I still clutched the bent metal plate, but the engraved circle had changed. It was no longer 0. It was 1. The official story became simple because official stories are designed to be simple. I had disappeared at 12 while living with my aunt. My aunt had died in hospital the next day from a sudden cerebral hemorrhage. The house had burned down in an electrical fire. Kisaragi Ward had never existed. No records, no residents, no school transfer, no bus route, no municipal paperwork. The land where it should have been was an undeveloped drainage basin fenced off after repeated flooding. When police asked where I had been for 5 years, I told them I did not remember. That was easier. Relatives I barely knew took me in. Doctors examined me. Reporters tried to reach me. A psychologist explained dissociation, trauma, fugue states. He had kind eyes and a voice practiced in patience. He asked what I remembered. I told him I remembered rain. He wrote that down. Years passed. I learned how to live in places that appeared on maps. I learned that most towns did not broadcast rain in the morning. I learned to sleep through thunderstorms. I learned to keep no photographs in my apartment. But routine is a patient predator. Without noticing, I built one. Wake at 6, sit up, check phone, shower, coffee, train, office, lunch from the same convenience store, return, dinner, sleep, safe, ordinary repetition, a fence, a shape. On my 30th birthday, I woke before my alarm, 6:09. My apartment was dark. City lights seeped through the curtains in gray bands. For several seconds, I did not know what had woken me. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I did not answer. It vibrated again and again. At 6:10, every phone in the apartment building began ringing. Not just mine. Through the walls, I heard them. Muffled tones from neighbors' rooms, alarm melodies, old default chimes buzzing against tables, vibrating across floors. Dozens of devices calling at once. Then the building speakers crackled. We did not have building speakers. Rain filled the ceiling. My phone screen lit by itself. Incoming call. The caller ID displayed my own name. I backed away from the bed. The call answered without my touch. For a moment, there was only static. Then a child's voice spoke. My voice at 12. Good morning. I could not move. Behind it faintly, I heard other sounds. A bakery bell, a train crossing, cicadas, my aunt chanting, my father knocking on a door. The child on the phone whispered, "We got out wrong." Water began to bead on the inside of my window. Not rainwater. It pushed through the glass like sweat through skin. The voice continued. "You were supposed to bring all of us." From the hallway outside my apartment came the sound of bare feet running through shallow water. I grabbed the bent plate from the drawer where I had kept it hidden for 13 years. Its surface was cold enough to burn. The engraved number had changed again. It now read 118, the same as the abandoned toy store. My apartment doorbell rang once, twice, 3 times. Then someone knocked, not on the door, on the window. I lived on the 9th floor. I turned slowly. My father hung outside the glass in the rain, one hand raised in greeting. His face was exactly as I remembered except for the eyes. They were full of dark water and tiny white fingernails. Beside him floated my mother, hair spread upwards, smiling with unbearable tenderness. Behind them were others. My aunt, Haru, my grandmother, the woman in the raincoat, the barefoot children from the bus stop, neighbors I had forgotten, shopkeepers, teachers, office workers, faces scratched from photographs. All suspended in the vertical rain outside my apartment, all pressed close to see me. My father mouthed something. I shook my head. He mouthed it again. "Let me see you." The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. The child's voice came from the speaker, small and pleased. We practiced. The apartment door unlocked. I ran to stop it, but the hallway was already opening inward. Not my hallway. Not anymore. Beige walls stretched beyond the door, humming under fluorescent lights. Damp carpet, no windows. From far inside came the sound of town speakers crackling awake. A recorded voice began reading numbers, 1, 3, 12, 44, 118. Then my name. Not the name my parents gave me. The deeper one. The sound I had been before I was born. Every window in the city across from mine lit up at once. For a moment I saw people standing behind them. Thousands of people in apartments and offices and hotels, all waking at the same time, all turning toward the sound only they could hear. Some held phones, some held children, some touched their throats as if a voice inside them had moved. The rain had learned the network. It no longer needed the ward. The hallway beyond my door breathed. From it came my aunt's voice, weak and furious. "Do not answer." But from the window came my mother's voice, "My child." I closed my eyes. The cruelest thing about grief is that it does not weaken with knowledge. You can know the dead are bait. You can know the voice is a hook. You can know the hand reaching from the dark has too many joints, and still you want to take it. The phone on the floor crackled. The child who was me began to laugh. "Open." I did not. The rain outside thickened. Faces blurred. The glass bowed inward. My father's hand passed through first, fingers folding and unfolding, searching the air. Then my mother's hair entered in wet strands. Then my aunt's scream bent into static. I backed into the beige hallway. The apartment disappeared behind me. The door became a rectangle of darkness full of rain and family. I ran again. That is what I do now. I run through places that almost make sense. Hotel corridors with no rooms. Convenience stores where every package has my childhood photograph printed on it. School stairwells that descend for days. Train platforms where the announcement voice apologizes for delays caused by ancestral weather. Office floors where every desk is mine and every computer plays a video of my aunt standing in the kitchen frying an egg, whispering to keep the day in order. Sometimes I find doors to other places. A laundromat in Osaka at 3:33 a.m. A hospital basement in Seoul where the vending machines sell wet tea. A suburban house in Ohio where a little girl tells her mother the shower drain said her name. A shopping mall in Germany after closing where rain falls upward in the glass elevator and all the mannequins wear dark blue raincoats. I do not stay. I have learned the rules are not gone, they have only changed shape. Do not trust recorded weather. Do not answer a voice that knows your childhood name. Do not keep a routine long enough for it to grow teeth. Do not photograph the dead unless you are willing to feed what stands behind them. And if, at 6:10 in the morning, your phone begins playing Rain with no app open, do not look outside. Do not check the hallway. Do not wake the person beside you. Lie still. Cover your ears if it comforts you, though it will not help. Wait until 6:20. If the rain stops, you may have another day. If it does not stop, listen carefully. Beneath it, you may hear running footsteps. You may hear a child laughing. You may hear someone you love knocking gently from the wrong side of the room. And then, sooner or later, you will hear my voice. I am sorry for that. I am so sorry. But I have been running for a very long time, and the rain has learned to run with me.